What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking our top 5 final round selections for the 2022 fantasy football draft. Basically, these are the guys that more than likely are going to be all available in the final round of your draft with some really nice upside that could potentially turn into league winners. So these are names you should absolutely know, regardless of the fact that it's going to be your last pick in your drafts. So it should be pretty entertaining. If you guys enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree with these names? Who else would you add on this list, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. And also, lastly, make sure to check out the 2022 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide, now available for purchase. Everything you could want at a great price. Details in the description. But with that being said, let's get started. And as you can see, we have got the 2022 Fantasy Pros consensus rankings pulled up here. And since we're going to be talking the last round, we're going to scroll down to pretty much right around the 160 mark in terms of rankings. You know, again, depending on the size of your leagues, this is probably right around the spot where you're going to be talking the final round. So let's take a look now. This was sorted based on standard rankings, but standard PPR, when you get this far down, it's going to be pretty comparable. So let's start with the number one guy on our list. That is Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers. Now, a lot of people, including myself, are very high on Allen Lazard and his upside for this offense without Davante Adams, but Christian Watson is a very intriguing candidate. I mean, the Green Bay Packers didn't really add any wide receiver help after Davante Adams left. They did so primarily via the draft and primarily via Christian Watson, who was their top wide receiver drafted and a guy that a lot of people liked as a potential difference maker in this draft class. You know, kind of underrated that not a lot of people were talking about. Now you pair him up with Aaron Rodgers. It's a really intriguing combination. Now, again, you know, it's a situation where I don't expect that anyone in this offense is going to be the next Davante Adams or anything like that. And, you know, Aaron Rodgers likes the guys that he likes in terms of the chemistry that he has with them. He kind of needs to trust you in order to go to you often. But even with all those things said, I think Watson is essentially the number 2 wide receiver on this offense, which can be valuable. The question is, how consistent will he be? Now, obviously, all these guys that we're going to mention here have question marks, and probably a lot of them. That's why they're available here in the final rounds of your drafts. But the upside is there. He's on an offense with a Hall of Fame quarterback. If something happens to Allen Lazard, he's essentially being thrust into that starting role. And I think there will be possibilities here for him. You know, again, I think he's probably going to be somebody that's a lot more valuable in dynasty formats, if you're talking redraft, probably next year, the year after that. I do think he can be a wide receiver 1 for the Packers. It probably won't be this year, but just definitely still a name that you should know. An intriguing name. Again, he's outside of the top 60 wide receivers. Probably one of our favorite rookies to take a chance on, considering the draft capital for the other guys like Drake London, Garrett Wilson, just throwing out names there, is a little bit too high for our liking. So somebody this late definitely fits the bill. Next up, we're going to talk Evan Ingram, just a spot lower here at the number 165 spot. He joins the Jacksonville Jaguars this offseason. I've mentioned him before as one of our top tight end values. And, he was ranked outside the top 20 tight ends this season. And I get it. He was, for the most part, while with the New York Giants, a disappointment. He was a guy that we always pumped up, and we were going to say, this is going to be the year. He's not going to have issues with injuries. The offense is going to figure it out. He's going to be featured. He's not going to have issues with drops. None of that really ever all came together. But what remains true is that he's still an amazingly physically tight, kind of talented tight end, and he's a true mismatch at that position. The Jaguars just paid him a lot of money this offseason. So you would think that, he's going to be featured in this offense. And speaking of this offense, you look at the wide receivers for the Jaguars, there's nobody to, potentially say, okay, he is the true number 1 dude. Like, okay, there's Christian Kirk, who got paid way too much money. There's Marvin Jones still on the team. And the Jaguars offensively, with the coaches they've brought in, they want to feature the tight end position. There have been rumors, at least early on in free agency, that Ingram might be lined up in the slot. We'll see. But I think he's going to get a nice chance here in Jacksonville to kind of restart his career. And at the tight end position, that's the beauty of it. It's usually outside of the top 5 guys, a true gamble, and you never really know what's going to happen. I think Ingram, considering the names that he's surrounded by here in terms of other tight ends, I think he's going to have a decent chance to outperform his ADP. So keep an eye out for Evan Ingram. I think that he can, be potentially a top 15 tight end on the season, and maybe even a little bit better in PPR formats where I think he's going to see more targets than people anticipate. Next up, we have got Khalil Herbert of the Chicago Bears. And look, with Herbert, we obviously know he's not the starter in Chicago. That belongs to David Montgomery, who's being drafted around the 3rd round of drafts towards the end of it. But what remains true is the fact that Herbert is the next guy up if something happens to Montgomery, which I think he proved that he could handle that role last season. When Montgomery was hurt, Herbert filled in admirably on an offense that had a lot of issues. He was playing like a high-end running back too. And in fact, I think it's going to be sooner rather than later that we're going to be talking about Herbert maybe as a top 25 running back. Now, it won't be this season unless there's an injury, but, I think that when it's time for Montgomery to renegotiate his contract with the Bears, they probably let him walk. And I think that Herbert, they'll be decently confident in and comfortable in to be their next guy up. So if you're a Montgomery owner, if it costs you pretty much the final pick in your draft to get Khalil Herbert, who can be a decent handcuff, and in fact, I think a handcuff that not enough people are talking about at the running back position, that's kind of just flying under the radar, I would definitely take a chance on him. And, if there's any injuries, anything like that, you potentially have, again, a high-end running back too that can be inserted in your lineups, and you can get decent production from if last year is any indication. But let's continue to go down this list now. We're going to work our way a little bit more down. And we're going to talk here one Jamison Crowder of the Buffalo Bills coming in at the 187 spot. He's definitely a guy that I have higher a little bit in my PPR rankings, but so many people are infatuated with Gabriel Davis, and I think way too much so. I mean, I've seen articles out there that want to call him like the next breakout wide receiver, potentially a top 12 guy, which is insane in my opinion. The guy only had 35 catches last year, for God's sakes. And look, guys like, Emmanuel Sanders outproduced him last season. And I think that Jamison Crowder can kind of fill that void. There's, also a void left from the departure of Cole Beasley. I think Crowder fits that mold. I think he could potentially be, for the start of the season, the number 2 wide receiver for this offense. I mean, the issues that he's had the last couple of years is that obviously he's been on the god-awful team in the Jets, and he's had no help at the quarterback position, and he's dealt with some injuries, but he is an efficient wide receiver. I think in PPR formats, you're going to have a flex-worthy guy that not enough people are talking about just because they're buying into the hype of Gabriel Davis. And sure, maybe the Gabriel Davis breakout happens this season, but I still think he's being overhyped, and I don't think it's going to be consistent all season long. I think Jamison Crowder, you're going to be able to get a lot better returns from him, and when you take into consideration his cost, he'd be the number 2 wide receiver for this Bills offense that I would be targeting. And then finally, I want to target Mark Ingram of the New Orleans Saints, because right now, Alvin Kamara is facing a potential suspension. Now, nobody knows how long it'll be, and whether, it's going to be a situation if the New Orleans Saints are going to add anyone else. But as things stand right now, Mark Ingram is the number 2 guy for the Saints. And we've seen him on numerous occasions last year, years prior, fill in very admirably for Alvin Kamara. And I think he can do the same here. Look, if Kamara is gone for 6 games, you essentially, with Mark Ingram, who, again, ranked 192, almost outside of the top 200 guys, you're going to have a top running back 2 for that period of time. I truly believe that. Now, if the Saints go and add somebody else, a capable veteran running back, then it's a different situation. But the fact that they still haven't added anyone else, I do think is kind of a vote of confidence for Ingram. So keep that in mind. Now, this take might be one that we have to adjust a little bit if, it's only a 1 or 2 game suspension for Alvin Kamara for his altercation during the Pro Bowl. But if it really is like a third of the season, I think Mark Ingram can truly be a steal at this point in time. He rattles off a couple of, big games. He's capable of being that pass catcher for the Saints. He can be a bruiser as well. Maybe you even flip him before Alvin Kamara comes back and get some value back that way. But I definitely think Mark Ingram is a guy that will have value this season while Kamara is gone. He's done it before, and I truly believe he can do it again. But with that, we kind of wrap up this breakdown of our top 5 final round upside picks that you should be going after this season in your 2022 fantasy football drafts. As always, let us hear in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree? Who else would you put on this list? If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Again, make sure to check out the 2022 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide, now available for purchase. Details in the description. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.